Let's get started, everybody. So, my name is Riley. Welcome to our 13th, I think, annual real estate talk here at Greenstreet. I think we've done 20 of them now, and this is our second one this year. So I just wanted to welcome all of you and say also a big thank you to Silvano and the owner of Greenstreet for hosting us here. I love this setting. It feels like Coconut Grove. For those of you who know me, this is my home away from home. I'm here almost every day, so if you ever need anything, I'm sitting right out there most mornings. So I love seeing so many friendly, familiar faces and a lot of new faces. So I just want to real quick get a poll of the room, please. So if you live in a single family home, would you raise your hand in Coconut Grove? Okay. Condo, townhouses. If you're a realtor trying to steal all my secrets, raise your hand, please. Okay. Please take care of them in the back there, Mike. All right. So anyway, the idea behind the real estate talk is just that, this is my home, it's my passion, Coconut Grove. I'm born and raised here. For those of you who don't know me, I've been doing this close to 25 years and really specializing here in the Grove. And so many people are constantly asking me questions about what's happening in the market. So this is sort of my way of putting it out there to the world. We are being recorded, so if you're wanted, then this is not the place for you. There will be a recording live sent to everybody who registered. You'll be able to see it whenever you want. Run back all of these exciting numbers before you go to bed tonight. If you're not a numbers person, I apologize. This is a lot about numbers here, but I'm going to try to change it up a little bit. So basically, we're going to run through what's happening in the Grove single-family condo townhouse market, but also I think right now with such uncertainty in the real estate market, I wanted to take a minute to sort of look at the bigger picture and talk about what's going on. Like if you start reading the news, right, all you see is conflicting reports every day. So here's one: South Florida home sales fall in September, prices rise. How South Florida winning the nation's real estate war. Home markets continue to cool down in South Florida. These are all written in the same week, by the way. So here's one: second best single family home volume dollar in history. So the idea behind this is just to take a minute and sort of give us a pause. So generally we really focus on Coconut Grove, but I want to take a few minutes to talk about some of the buzzwords and hot topics that are happening in the real estate market, and then look at what's happening in Miami and talk about what's going on in the nation just for a few minutes, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty. So hot topics today, right? Of course, no surprise, interest rates, everybody's favorite topic. My last client just got quoted 8.1, I think, for a conventional 30-year loan. So a lot of you go, oh my God, but those you don't know, the 30-year average for a 30-year fixed mortgage is 7.5. So, we've forgotten about pre-COVID and what that was like. 15 years ago I bought a home, I paid 6%, didn't really think of it. Now 8 seems outrageous. So there are some better rates out there. If you're willing to get an ARM, you can get us, into the 7s, but it doesn't look like interest rates are going in anywhere anytime soon. The question everybody asks me is, what are interest rates going to do? My answer is, I have no idea. And anybody who can tell you is lying. I don't think even the guy who sets the rates knows what he's talking about until the day before. So this is the environment we're in, but it is having a pretty substantial effect on what's happening in our market and across the country. Last month was the lowest mortgage origination in the last, I think, 30 years. So, and I see a mortgage broker in the back shaking her head, probably crying as we're speaking. So, that is having an impact on our buyers, and I'm going to talk about that as we go along. But anybody have any questions on interest rates before we move on? Okay. The more you drink and the more questions you ask, the better this will be, I promise. Okay, so inventory. Everybody asks me about inventory. And yes, it is true, historic low inventory. Across the country, we're about 2 million homes short from having a home for everybody who wants to buy one. Here in Miami, we're very low, and you'll see those numbers later. And in Coconut Grove, we're absolutely historically low, just slightly maybe off of last year. But the numbers are still pretty depressing in terms of what's available. Some of the causes of that, right? If you see the charts that we're going to show you here the last few years, during COVID, we sold double the amount of homes that we would normally sell. A lot of those sellers were people who would probably be selling last year and this year, but just took advantage of people literally knocking on their door with bags of cash, right? So we saw a disruption in the normal sales cycle. And then you add on top of that the people who did refinance or buy their homes with a 2-3% mortgage rate, wondering where they're going to go, what are they going to buy with an 8% rate, right? So I think that's what's really holding inventory low. It's going to be a while before we unlock it, which I think is going to, our next thing is pricing. So Is pricing going to fall or pricing going to rise? Everybody's asking this question. Nobody has a crystal ball, but all the indicators that I see and people that I talk to in the real estate world say that probably prices are going to rise in most markets because of the inventory levels are so low. There is just not enough houses for everybody. And you'll see that in Coconut Grove, especially when we get into the numbers. There's just some interesting stats out there on where the market is going in pricing right now. So right now, in this last week, they just came out a stat with 55,000 homes went under contract last week. That's the lowest week on record in more than 20 years across the country. So I think because of the interest rates, I think because of the low inventory, the buyers are just sitting on the sidelines waiting for something to happen, one to give. But I do think that what may happen is while you're waiting for the interest rates or the perfect home, more and more buyers are building up, and sooner or later the interest rates will come down, and I do believe that will drive our pricing here. So I feel very confident pricing in Miami is going to continue to rise, and I think certainly in Coconut Grove, where we've become one of the hottest markets in the country, and people are talking about Coconut Grove that never heard of it a couple years ago. So, all right. Is the market going to crash? This is a question I get every single day while I'm sitting at Greenstreet because everybody's hoping and waiting for it to crash. If you hadn't bought a house the last few years, you're feeling priced out with interest rates and pricing. But right now, if you look at the health of our market compared to 2008, when the crash was happening, 65% of homeowners in America either own their home outright or have 50% equity. And most of the rest of them have an interest rate probably between 4 and 5 at the most. So really, the odds on a crash are very, very slim. They're not walking away from the homes like they did back then. They weren't living with these crazy mortgages that people were handing out. So walking away from that kind of equity is probably not going to happen. So I don't predict a crash, and no doomsday, nothing like that. So if you're hoping to get that house for $1 million less, I doubt it's going to happen. All right. So usually we jump right into Grove, but I just want to show Miami for a minute. What's happening here? I'm sorry I'm talking fast. We have a lot to go through, and I don't like to keep everybody too long. But if you have questions as we go, please raise your hands. All right, so Miami, we'll start with single family. So the long blue lines you see here, the light blue lines, that's the inventory. The red line are pending sales, and the blue lines are closed sales so far. The obvious trend is pre-COVID. We had more than double basically the inventory that we have in Miami right now in single family homes. Has ticked up, of course, from the low in 22. That was when we were right in the middle of it. But it's definitely nowhere near where we were for a good part of the last 10 years. Pending sales have been trending down, of course, because of interest rates and low inventory. Number of sales will probably be equal with last year or the tail end of 2022. So I just want to show how inventory is dramatically different here because everybody's talking about it, but this chart really shows the difference in number of homes. Same thing goes for condos, right? The condos have a very, very similar trend. Again, pre-COVID, we had way too many condos for sale, over 14,000. I think we hit 15,000 for sale at one point in time. And now we're looking at right around, 6,000, right? Yeah. So just about 6,000 condos in all of Dade County on the market. And again, you can see the trending line on pending is down. And certainly, we're going to be pretty much back to pre-COVID levels on home sales or condo sales. Any questions on the condo market, guys? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that 55,000 is the lowest of contracts across the country. What's the standard like to a healthy market?
I'm not positive, but I heard somewhere between 75 and 85,000. So I can't swear to it, but this was like a historic low number of, and that was new pendings last week, not just the whole market, just 1 week pendings. Before we dive into the Grove, the last market is certainly a market that's taken off here, which is the luxury market in Miami. Every day you're reading a headline about this $100 million, that $50 million, the condos, townhouses, and both of them have had a real increase in the luxury market. So when we're looking at luxury, we're talking $5 million and above. And you can see certainly today we have, if I were to put the two graphs together, 1/10 of all condos and homes in Miami now are selling at $5 million or above on the asking price. Again, this is asking price, right? You see in the blue lines. Number of sales is down here. We used to almost have none, and you can see obviously a huge spike during COVID, and then we're trending back down to the normal line, but the inventory number of 5 million plus homes is pretty astronomical right now. And that is condos and townhouses. All right. So historically, when I did this talk, I talked about single family homes just because that's the largest group that we focus on. But today we're going to start with condos because the Coconut Grove condo market has completely changed in the last 3 to 4 years. And what I mean by that is really the buyer pool for the condo market has changed. Right? So certainly there are probably tens of thousands of condos in the Grove, but we're just going to focus on the main ones today, the big buildings we've all heard of, just to have a sample size. So this is Grove Isle, and then we have up and down the Bayshore corridor. So Grove of Grand Bay, Park Grove, Grosvenor House, those main buildings that you see on Bayshore right down here. So those represent about 2,000 sample size. So there's about 2,000 condos up and down Bayshore Drive. So bear that in mind when you see the numbers. Whoops, uh-oh. There we go, sorry. So 2,000 condos possibly could be for sale, and you'll see here we only have 55. Partly, and so 9 under contract. This is the average price right now of an asking price on the condos. So we're almost asking, anything that's looking at the water is certainly asking over $3 million right now. And then the average ask price is $1,300. Can everybody see the TV in the back? Yes? Everybody? No? You got it, Jimmy? See it? Okay. Yes, thank you. All right. So this is the interesting part, the sold numbers. So year to date, we've had 86 of those 2,000 sell. If you remember before, the average asking price is 3.7. The average sales price is only 2.7. So that's part of the story to be told, right? That there's such a disconnect right now between the sellers and the buyers, in addition to the low inventory, in addition to the high interest rates, which is why we have historic low number of sales, which we'll see coming up here in a minute. All right, so this chart really, why does that keep happening? Okay, so this chart really tells the story. Obviously, all of a sudden, 2021, COVID, full on, we're going full speed. We more than doubled the condos in this market we've ever sold. And when I talk about the market changing, it's not just the pricing that's changing on the markets. It's the people coming who are using and living in condos, right? Most of my career, the condos around here were looked at as second homes for out-of-towners and snowbirds, or people who were local, who wanted to downsize. Families have now gone away and they're moving in. So the buyer pool wasn't very big. But once COVID came, there was a whole new buyer pool moving in from New York, Chicago, LA, and all these major cities where they were extremely comfortable raising their families in condos. They liked the doormen, they liked the amenities. So all of a sudden, our condo market became a lot more attractive. We also, right around 2020, had another building come online. So, the luxury condo market just had this incredible spike. And you'll see here, which we're going to be nowhere near this year. Any questions on condos?
Riley, I have a question.
Yep.
With regards to the year built of the condos, do you see a big distinction between the condos that were built 2000 plus versus 2000 minus?
Yeah, so we'll have a slide coming up in just a minute that will show all of those condos that we're talking about. So, thank you. All right, this is an astounding number here. So, if you're just going back to 2019, pre-COVID, right, and you owned any one of the condos on Bayshore Drive, you saw an average increased price of 109% in 2 years, 3 years max. That's, obviously nothing like that has ever happened in the history. We really were a sleepy little condo market until COVID hit, and we were always around 500 a foot. And now we're pretty much looking at 1,000 a foot for anything on Bayshore Drive and even in Grove Isle.
What's the average size?
Average size?
Yeah.
They're all over the place because this represents some of the bigger buildings, 2,500 maybe, more or less. But there are some units that are 5,000 on here, and there's some that are one bedrooms as well. Units for sale. So here, when you look at units for sale, again, all of these represent the different buildings, but you can see the differences between what was for sale then and what's for sale now, right? So if you look at 2019, Park Grove, 37, only 9, 20 and 3. The big one is Grove Isle. They had 31 for sale. So Grove Isle probably benefited as much as anybody from this. Grove Isle's really taken off in the last couple years. Everybody seems to like living on the island now that they settled the lawsuits and things are moving back to normal there. But you can see that pretty much there's only a few buildings that are the same. And then to your question, so number of units sold, we can see that pretty much we're all going to be down compared to the last year. And this is all of the individual units. So I know it's pretty small. Again, we're going to send out the slides to everybody. So if you live in a particular building, you'll be able to dig into this a little bit closer. The Ritz-Carlton certainly had a really big spike during COVID, and now it's come back down again. Some of the smaller ones, Yacht Harbor, Grove Tower, Grove Hill, they don't trade as much, so we have a little bit. of inventory on the market, and even in the Sonesta, there's only one available right now, so, or sold this year, sorry. So sales price per building, this is what Dominique was asking about. You'll see some of the newer buildings versus older buildings here. So Park Grove being a newer building, Grove of Grand Bay, you're looking at $1,500 a foot, $1,800 a foot right now. Whereas you go to some of the older buildings in Grove Isle, and Yacht Harbor just had one sale, that's why that spiked, so don't really look at that number. But Grove Tower and Grove Hill and Grosvenor House, you know, you can kind of see the older buildings certainly trailing behind the newer buildings in price per square foot for obvious reasons. I personally love the older buildings better, bigger balconies, much better service, not the chaos that's going on, but that's just personal choice. Any questions on condos? Yes, sir.
Is there like a threshold where the new building becomes the old building? What is like a sweet spot?
The question was, is there a threshold from where the old building, you know, the new building now becomes old, right? Probably the Grosvenor House is the threshold on that one. Even though it's much older, it's been maintained impeccably, it's still considered one of the best buildings. After that, you got to go all the way back to the 70s, where we had Grove Isle, Yacht Harbor, Grove Tower. Those were all built then, 72, 73, 74, and then a couple built in the 80s. Grosvenor House came in, and then we really went a long time without any new builds until the last 5 years. Any questions on condos? You guys are a tough crowd today. Good thing I'm not a stand-up comedian. All right. So Coconut Grove single-family homes. Whoop, there's some people that come on in. Okay. So this is the market that we spend the most in. I just think it's the driver of our community. So I have a few more charts here than I had in the other ones. It's probably the market I focus on the most. So if you have any questions, yell them out. But here we go. So right now, when we look at the pool of homes in Coconut Grove, there's about 4,000 single-family homes in Coconut Grove. We only have 71 for sale. Again, we should probably have at least 150 and closer to 200 if we go back historically. So those numbers are way down. The average home right now, and you'll see the average sale price is different. So the average asking price for a home in the Grove right now is $6 million. Does that make everybody happy who has a home in the Grove? I am very happy about that. The average asking price, again, $1,400. Again, in this market, sellers are asking, I think, very aspirational prices. I don't think that's going to continue. This last month, I saw a stat that 38% of all homes in America have had at least one price reduction since they've come on the market. So I think that's a trend that we're going to start to see happen, where the sellers are trying to figure out where the buyers are going to go. The buyers are no longer pushing the upper limits. But as you'll see, pricing is still stable. It's just not continuing at leaps and bounds like it was before, right? Before, the prices were going up as fast as you could push the calculator, but it really has changed now. I think the buyers are a lot more thoughtful, a lot more patient, waiting for either inventory or interest rates or something to give a little bit. So we'll look at, compare these numbers to this chart. This is one of my favorite charts that we do every year. So this chart represents pre-COVID, 2019. We had 150 homes for sale. Now we have 71. So obviously a drastic discount in terms of homes, or lower number. But the really incredible thing is 1 million and 2 million was a very healthy market in 2019. We had almost 90-something homes available. Now we have 6 under $2 million in Coconut Grove. So really the new entry point to Coconut Grove for anything more than a small 2-bedroom is really you're looking at 2 million plus at least, and we're pushing 3 million. So now you can see down here, you know, if you look at the biggest growing sector now, 23, you know, a third of our homes that are on the market are priced at 5 million or above. Back in then, it was only 10 out of 152. So that segment has really ballooned. Some of them properly priced, some of them not properly priced. I do expect some of them to come back down again. But just the fact that these two categories dominated in 19, and now this is all that is there, is pretty telling us what's happened. Yes, Lily?
Do you see any price depreciation of homes that were grabbed in the last couple of years with COVID and so on?
Yeah.
Homes that were sold for $2 million,
Yeah.
and now sellers want to sell. What is the ratio of depreciation to some of these single-family homes?
The question was, if someone bought 2 or 3 years ago and they wanted to sell now, what is the appreciation or what's happened? Certainly they're not going down. I've seen one client, I think, that actually bought then, had to sell pretty quickly and had to take a loss. So they're definitely still higher than they were, but it's maybe a 10% from the top, probably. But you know, if you bought into the very, very peak, you might be even. But just because there's so little inventory, there's probably a buyer that will pay you at least what you paid. So.
Got a question. What's the average size of the lot?
The average size of a lot in Coconut Grove is about 7,500 square feet. Yeah. Obviously, we have some acre lots, and we have some North Grove 5,200, but the average is about 7,500 to 8,000. All right, so now we can see what has sold. So 76 sold year to date. You're going to see in a minute where that looks on the chart when we look at history. The average sales price is 3.2, but if we go backwards, remember the average asking price is 6.1. Right? So some of our houses are 40, 50% overpriced. So hopefully none of my clients in the room have that problem. Okay. All right, so this is a pretty good number right here. The average price per square foot is running in the high 9s. That number obviously is an average. We're seeing fully renovated newer construction pushing up over 1,200. There's a couple new construction homes right now that you'll get to in a minute that are pushing $1,400 and $1,500 a foot. You know, I think there will be a time not too far away with the demand for new construction. We're going to be seeing $2,000 a foot for new construction, I would bet, in the next few years. But I'm getting ahead of myself, sorry. This is something that's been going up now. Average days on the market, 93. Certainly we were at a period in time during COVID where we were like 10, 15, 12 days. If you were on the market for 2 weeks, you had to fire your realtor. He was an idiot, and you know, something was really wrong. So we're getting back to certainly a normal market in that respect. And then 92% off list price. So if you were at $1 million, you could anticipate having a sale price of about $920. That is about historically the right number since I've been doing real estate. Obviously during COVID, we were actually over asking price on average, but we're getting back to the historical levels, which means that you can expect to negotiate 8 to 10% off your price. But again, if you're this person, you're not expecting 40% off your price, right? You're hoping for a much higher number. So this chart is pretty telling as to where we are. Obviously COVID, just like this, the condo market, 286 homes, double almost any time in our history. We couldn't give them away fast enough. Coming down, coming down. Certainly we're probably going to get back to almost probably historic low level this year. Maybe we'll hit 100 if we're lucky. There's not that many pendings that are going to close this year left. So this is a pretty telling number here. Any questions on single family so far? Yes, sir.
So, just one clarify. You got it wrong, or you said that average list price was 6.2 million,
Yes,
but the average sale price was 3.2 million.
correct.
There's a 3 million discrepancy.
Oh yeah, yes. Yeah, again, it's there. We have some homes for sale that are $40 million that probably should be $25 million. So there are some big numbers, and we're talking a much smaller sample size than we used to. So the numbers are skewed. But that's just a quick way to see that most home sellers are overpriced. And I'll show you the pattern in just a minute. Yes, sir.
How many more units are in the North Grove or in the Grove market today versus 2010?
For sale?
No,
Oh.
single-family homes that were built in the last 10, 12 years.
I don't know the answer, but I would guess 100, 150 maybe, something in that range, if I had to guess. So here's the chart, very similar to condos, right? You bought a house right before the crash, or right before the boom, 2019. Again, we were bumping along under 500 foot. I was screaming to everybody, we should be 1,000 a foot this close to downtown Miami. I never understood why our market would never take off. It took COVID to make that happen, but if you bought in 19 and then you have your home still today, you're looking at over 100% increase. And that's pretty much across the board at all price points when you look at it. So quite a good investment, I would say. Here we go. So now we can sort of see, this chart is really interesting. So if the average home, if we went back 10 years, was selling for just around $1 million in Coconut Grove. Right? Today, the average home is selling for $3.2 million. So certainly, you know, in 10 years, we've had not just a COVID appreciation, but an unbelievable steady rise all the way up with just a few dips right before COVID. And one of the reasons I like this chart is because a lot of times people say, well, you know, I don't want to buy now when everything is so high. But if you look at the Grove and you look at Miami, historically, take the crash away, we have historically always ascended. So I really believe if you find the right home and the perfect place for you, there's probably not a bad time to buy a home in Coconut Grove. unless you have to get an 8% mortgage, then that might be. So, all right, so if we look back at what's closed, so similar to the other chart, again, you can see back in 2019, we had 160 sales and we had 76, so basically about same ratio as the actives. But you can see the million here and then under 2 million, representing almost 2/3 of all the homes sold. So just 3 years ago, most homes sold in Grove were under $2 million. Now we fast forward to now where we have 0 sold and we only have 27. So 27 out of our 76 are here, or under 2 million. And I think, again, this number is going to shrink every day. There's just so few homes that are going to be priced going forward at $2 million. So here's the chart that shows the progression of a seller today. The average seller, when they come on the market right here, the average for sale right now is $1,400 a foot. We mentioned that before. But if you follow the trend of how you get to a closed sale, there's going to be a 27% price reduction, which usually means 1, 2, or 3 realtors will get fired, and then they'll find the right price. And you'll land here somewhere about $1,000 a foot, a little over $1,000 a foot. Once you get to this number, you can expect to have the normal 8 to 7 to 9% off and land you here. So we're seeing a 33% difference between where you're asking today and where you're probably going to end up down the road. Again, on average. And a lot of that is because we have such little inventory. A lot of my sellers that I talk to, like, hey, if somebody pays me a lot, I want to move, but I have nowhere to go. So we do have a lot of sellers that are kind of hoping. But this is a pretty chart, and it hasn't really changed in the last couple of years. Any questions on this chart here? Yes?
How does that play in between like older homes that are getting listed high
Yeah.
and new construction?
I mean, new construction, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Certainly the fastest growing segment, and I know new construction is treating you well. But you know, the new construction homes are still selling faster. Certainly they're selling for way less off asking price. Although we've had a couple come on at some crazy prices, but we're seeing people pay those. So I would probably say most of this is homes that are not fully renovated or brand new, but just a regular home that needs some upgrading. Single permit price. So I always like this chart just so we can see where we are in Coconut Grove versus other cities. So those of you in the back, on the far left, Key Biscayne has the highest average price per square foot, just around almost 1.4. But they only have 27 sales year to date. So a very small market sample size. We have 76, we're just under 1,000 a foot. If you look at the Gables, 300 sales year to date, right? They're a little trailing behind us. A supply and demand issue there because you have more opportunity in the Gables. And then if you look at Miami in general, right? The average home is almost 500,000, which is historically high. And we've had 8,500 sales so far year to date. So our Grove market is like 1% of the entire market in Miami. You know, so the numbers can sometimes be very skewed. Just bear that in mind. Questions in the back? Anybody? Good? Okay. Yes?
Do you see a difference in the North Grove and the South Grove? But second question, sea level elevation, does that make a difference?
Sure. So 2 questions. One was a difference in North Grove and South Grove. So certainly if you were at one of these talks 10 years ago, the South Grove was way more dominant in its price per square foot and its average pricing. In the last few years, North Grove has caught up and in some senses surpassed it. Just I think because of the new buyer pool. You know, we have a big city buyer pool coming from all over America, and they tend to want to be closer to downtown. They're working downtown, whereas in the past we really had a different buyer pool that would live anywhere. So I would say North Grove is even and maybe even starting to go slightly ahead of South Grove. South Grove still, people talk about it, has more charm and more character, where I think North Grove has proximity to everything, a little more convenient to get everywhere. So it depends on kind of what you want. Also, I think schools play a big factor. More schools are to the south than the north, and schools drive a lot of our inventory here. 1 second, sir. The other question was sea level rise. I have not seen anybody really discount or not buy because of that. Knock on wood, we've been a few years away from a hurricane. And I think people forgot what happened on the other side of Bayshore Drive because I've seen LeBron James's old house just went under contract for $20 million, and I think it had 10 feet of water in it during a hurricane. So I feel like we're far enough away from a hurricane. That's more people worry about the hurricane than the actual sea level rise. That really, there's a few streets in the North Grove that have some issues with that, but for the most part, nobody's talking about that. Yes, sir?
Seems to me
Sure. Talking about parts of the Grove, right? Historically, we've always talked about South Grove, North Grove. You had Center Grove that had townhouses, and you had sort of West Grove, which is behind us here, and on the other side of Grand Avenue. And that, for years, was very selling at a big discount. But when we get into the townhouses, you're really going to see how that market has we just had a regular lot in North Grove go under contract, I think, for $220 a foot. I would still say the average is around 180, although land varies from street to street, tree to tree, neighborhood to neighborhood. There's going to be a day soon where most land is going to be at least $200 a foot, I think. And when you see the new construction numbers, you understand why developers are pushing those limits. So if you go back here to 2019, the average white box, yes, they were building white boxes back then, so it's been a while. The average white box was only selling for about $2.3 million. Fast forward to now, the average asking price for that same white box is almost $9 million. So, yeah. So there are 4 under contract. The average of the ones that are under contract are at $6.4 million. So obviously some of the asking prices are a little high, but there are also a couple of really big homes that are sitting on the market that are skewing the numbers. But even if you take this number, you're looking at a 3 times rise on new construction. So these numbers right here are what are making developers pay more for land. They're very bullish on the future of the Grove. I think absolutely new construction is going to continue. Every other buyer we talk to, that's really all they want. They don't want the headaches of building. If you, we were having a conversation earlier about working with City of Miami zoning and planning department. Those of you who are developers, you know the pain of that here. I think so. The premium to pay for someone who's already done all the work, right, between the tree mitigation and the zoning and everything you have to do, and then the cost of new construction, I think this premium is probably only going to go up, and people are going to continue to pay that premium. Most of these buyers, from what I've seen, are not getting mortgages. Right now, the Grove is averaging about 70% cash contracts. Some people will put financing on it during or after that, but most of them are not contingent, especially over $1 million. And most of the new construction is all being bought with cash. Any questions on new construction? I wish I knew how many there were out there. There's a lot being built, and I think that trend is going to continue. You know, the days of my dear to my heart are the old little Grove cottages, which are slowly becoming endangered species here. You know, I think it's just inevitable that progress is going to want. There's just so much demand for new. I hope they come up with a new style. I'm a little tired of the white box personally. I don't know about you guys, but all right. So if you look at price per square foot, again, pre-COVID, we're at $550 a foot, which is about 100 over what the average house was. The average house was about $475, $450. And now you can go all the way up to, these are actually sold right here. So 18 for sale, I'm sorry, 18 for sale. The average we're asking is $1,600 a foot. So even if they come down 10% off of that, it's a pretty incredible jump in just a couple years. And again, it's scarcity, it's demand, and it's cost of building, right? All of those things play into it. Anybody else? Questions? Yes, sir?
Do you know on average what it costs to build your home?
I do not. Sorry. Yes, sir?
Brother, regarding new construction, are there any features in particular, like, you know, specific home features that people that are performing well, that people really want? Yeah, that's it.
The question is, what do people really want most in a new construction home? I mean, obviously new, start with that, right? And then, you know, I think the point of emphasis is probably, oh, wait, let's back up one question. There's a man that can answer that question. Sir, yes, you. Sal, how much does it cost to build a new construction home today? Per foot? $500-600 a foot. So if you need a good architect for Coconut Grove real estate, he's the man right there. He's done a lot of homes in the Grove. Going back to your question, I think people are looking for certainly obviously 4 or 5 bedrooms at least, but they're looking for the big kitchen, big master bedroom. Those have always been the drivers for homes. They'll always be the drivers. Obviously, they're almost all 2 stories, really cool backyard space, you know, outdoor, indoor living, things like that.
Are you seeing anything in the sort of healthy, non-toxic residential space?
What is the healthy, non-toxic residential space?
Eco-friendly, sustainability, that sort of stuff.
Oh, no, unfortunately, I don't.
Non-toxic materials.
Oh, no, I have not heard a lot of people talking about that. There are a couple people that are trying to build prefab homes in the Grove that I think would be fantastic if we could get some stuff like that. But in general, solar and all of those things is not much talked about, unfortunately. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Elevator. Most of the newer ones are putting elevators now. Yeah, for the most part, if they have the space, the size. You know, on the smaller lots, not as much. But when you get to the bigger lots and there's a little more space, then you are seeing more elevators. All right, luxury market. So real quick before we finish up with townhouses, the luxury market. So when we define the luxury market, we're talking about $5 million and higher. Again, you can go back 10 years ago. We had exactly one condo and one house that was $5 million or more in Coconut Grove. Right? Come back now. So if you go into here, obviously single family, we had 27 units sold, and single family we had 10. And right now, year to date, we're at 8 and 14. So just in 10 years, we went from basically a zero market to slowly but surely becoming a big part of our market. Same thing here, you can see with sales price per square foot. And it's looking at the different years. So if you just go back the last couple of years, you can see here. So the blue is single family, and then the condos, which generally do tend to be higher. Again, we're only talking about the condos on Bayshore Drive. Most of them have in the luxury buildings, most of them looking at the water. And some of these numbers are a little skewed as some of the penthouses are going for like 2,500. But right now the nice buildings are generally running somewhere between 17 and 18 a foot for the newer construction buildings. All right, last segment before we go, townhouses. Anybody else have any questions of anything before we wrap up with townhouses in the Q&A? No? We're good? All right. So the townhouse market is really exploded in the last few years as single-family prices have taken off. Townhouses have always trailed behind. There's around 1,500 townhouses in existence today. When I say townhouse, I mean the traditional, you'll see a single-family or a duplex lot with two places on it that share a center wall. They're usually the 3-2, the more modern ones are 4-3s. They're scattered all behind us here, Center Grove, West Grove, the other side of Bird Road. But again, we have 1,500 and currently there's only 16 for sale. So, you know, what's happened in this market is it built so many townhouses and there were so many sales in the last few years. People are obviously not moving. Walkability has become a real thing here in Miami with the new influx of big city people who want the walkability. It became more important. Also, you can get a lot more house for a lot less money. You give up your yard and you do share a wall with somebody. So there are some trade-offs, but we're not seeing people move out of the townhouse market right now. So if you own a townhouse, it is a very hot commodity. The average list price right now is just about $2 million, which represents about 800 a square foot. We've only had 25 sold. So again, 1,500 available, only 25 have sold. So that is a really, really low number. The average sales price, remember the average ask is almost $2 million. The average sale is just about 1.8, 733. Days on the market, about half of a single family home right now. And then the condo market, the townhouse market is experiencing almost no negotiations. So we're looking at 2% off asking price. Any questions on townhouses? Anybody own townhouses? Want to sell a townhouse? I have like 10 buyers for townhouses. Come see me after. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the West Grove before.
Yep.
There's very little new construction, but I know that there is a pocket of new construction stuff coming up.
Yeah.
Would you think of pricing that more like the townhouse inventory at center?
Probably, yeah. I don't think it's going to go the same as single family for now. But certainly, you know, as Grand Avenue, and you guys have all seen big buildings going up, and you know, Point Group, Peter Gardner's doing some good stuff there. I think as Grand goes, that'll go. But in the near future, I think it's pricing more like a townhouse than a single-family home. Yeah. All right. So just looking at units sold again, you can see historic lows. Even though our inventory is probably double what it was 10 years ago, we're only having 25 sales this year. We probably won't even hit the 50 mark. And again, this is double inventory from when we had 2010, maybe even higher than double. So you can see a drastic drop off. Again, people buying here and here and here just don't want to move. We just can't pry anybody out of there. So, all right, and again, not to anybody's surprise, given this small number of sales, this is the highest increase in the last 2 years. Remember, both single family and condo was slightly over 100%. They're at almost 120% gain in a townhouse. And going all the way back to, I built 2 townhouses in 2005, and I sold them for $300,000, and I thought I was rich as can be. I think they're both worth like 1.8, 1.9 right now. So, it was my best real estate decision. So, but again, we bumped along a long time here. COVID hit. And I think a whole new buyer pool that really wants that walkability, and really that's what I hear all the time when we talk to people about what they're looking for. And I think that also goes to where you are in South Grove in single family and North Grove, and going towards what you're seeing in the rise in Center and West Grove, right? Is the closer you are to town, the easier I can walk into all the shops and restaurants and everything that's going on in our amazing city. I think that's really paying big dividends for those owners. I think we are almost done. As a matter of fact, there we are. So, my fantastic team is, some of them are in the room, the rest of them are out back. I hope you guys stay around, have a drink with us, talk about real estate. If you have any questions for me, I'm here. I'd really try to get you out of here in 1 hour, so thank you for your patience. Yes, sir.
What's happening to the theater?
Same thing that was happening 20 years ago. Nothing.
Riley, one more question.
Yes, Jeff.
If you had a crystal ball, what would you predict is going to happen in the Grove in the next 10 years, just in terms of growth?
Question is, if I had a crystal ball, what would I predict would happen in the next 10 years? First of all the sellers would call me to sell their homes. That's for sure. There'd be no other realtors working here. So besides the Rise Smith Group, if you want to join. But realistically, I just don't see how we slow down the ascension of prices. I just think, we all know I'm biased. I've been here my whole life. But if you live in the Grove or you think about coming here, right, the community's getting better every day. We have the water, we have the weather, we have it all. And those of us who live here, you couldn't pry us away. So I think that's going to be the case. And you're going to have to pay to play if you want to live in Coconut Grove. Yes? Sure. I couldn't hear, I'm sorry. Oh, sure, yes. So Mr. C's was promised to be done now, which means it'll be done sometime mid next year, most likely. That's just the way they all operate. But they are wrapping up. I think I just saw the first closing notice go out. So they should be closing starting probably March, I would guess, at the latest, maybe a little bit earlier. They are fully sold out, pre-construction. There's a couple that are starting to come on resale right now. They have 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, so the prices are from about $1.5 million all the way to $10 million, depending on what they're. And then, of course, we're all waiting and watching what's happening at the corner of 27th Avenue and Bayshore Drive, where the old Kaufman-Rossman building has pretty much been stripped and ready to go down soon. It definitely is official. Four Seasons residents will be there. I was talking to somebody that works in that world that tells me anything within 3 to 4 blocks of a Four Seasons anywhere in the country always has a massive appreciation once it's up and running. People just trust that brand and where they're going. So I think it says a lot about the Grove and where we're going and what we have, that the Four Seasons brand would be coming here. So, yes?
What do you see happening with the insurance on these properties and the lack of companies being able to insure these properties?
Yeah.
Are they messing with your code?
Yes. So the question is about insurance. Certainly everybody's heard the horror stories about insurance. It's gotten a lot harder. There have been some good news. There have been some reinsurers that have come back into the market, so it's not as hard as it was maybe 6 to 9 months ago. Obviously, another hurricane will change all that. But we are able to get insurance. It's just costing a ridiculous amount, and they're really particular on the condition of the house. So your roof has got to be much better than it was, all of your other things. Citizens certainly does not want to do any more business here. They're trying to divest their business. But there are a few other players. So we have not lost any deals because of insurance lately, where we were losing deals maybe 6 to 8 months ago. So I feel like that market has loosened a little, although the prices have not come down, certainly. Yes, sir.
There's been reports that there's an increase in foreclosures rate in the last 2 or 3 months, and it's going up massively at the national level.
Yeah, I've heard it on the national level. I have not seen it in Dade or in any numbers, and definitely not here in Coconut Grove. I don't think there's even, I think there's a few pre-foreclosures here and there I've seen, but I won't predict very many foreclosures, and I don't think any of them will ever hit the market if they do foreclose. Somebody will get them before they go to the market. All right, guys, a big thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it.